Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to spend almost a week in the United States this September. A lot is on the table during the visit of the Prime Minister to the United States to attend the annual United Nations General Assembly session, where the Prime Minister is expected to speak on the 26th of September. But before that, the Prime Minister is expected to hold an Indian community event on the 22nd of September. Thereafter, he is then expected to attend the Summit of the Future on the next day, the 23rd of September, and address the United Nations General Assembly tentatively on the 26th of September. Many bilateral meetings with world leaders are also expected on the sidelines of the UNGA. The Prime Minister is tentatively expected to be in the US between the 20th of September and the 26th, but the final schedule is still to be finalized. India is also trying to schedule a meeting of the heads of government of the Quad countries, a Quad summit, while the US president is there for the next few months before the election rolls in, and while the heads of both India, Australia, Japan, and of course the United States are expected to be there in attendance for the UNGA session. The Quad was supposed to have met earlier this year, but unfortunately, US President Joe Biden could not travel to India at that time for the Quad summit. The Prime Minister has spoken about multilateral cooperation through the platform of the Quad in his recent calls with both US President Joe Biden as well as Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Big preparations are on for the Prime Minister's community event, which is scheduled to happen on the 22nd of September, which is a Sunday in the outskirts of New York City. The venue will be the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum in New York. It's a venue that's known for holding large concerts and sporting events. It has a capacity of more than 15,000 people, and already we are told more than 25,000 people have expressed an interest to attend the Prime Minister's community outreach. The event has been titled Modi and the US. The Indian American community of the United States has announced that over 25,000 Indian Americans have already signed up to attend the community gathering. Registrations for the event have come through 590 community organizations, all of whom signed up as welcome partners from across the United States. Indian Americans from at least 40 different states of the United States are expected to attend. The response has been particularly strong from the tri-state area. Modi and the US promises to be a significant gathering celebrating the interconnected diversity of the Indian American community. The big focus is also coming in the backdrop of various meetings that the Prime Minister has had in the run-up to his America visit. He has just come back from a very successful visit to Ukraine, where he met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. 3 weeks prior to that, he had gone to Moscow and he met with President Vladimir Putin of Russia in Moscow. This was to try and revive the annual India-Russia summit-level dialogue, which had been suspended in person since the Russia-Ukraine war began in February of 2022. The Prime Minister followed up his visits to Ukraine and Russia with telephone calls to both President Biden of the United States and President Putin of Russia, both the phone calls happening within a space of just 24 hours. And that in itself is an indication of just how much the international community values India's leadership and the unique opportunity that India and India's leadership has to play some kind of a peace mediator role in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. One thing is very clear, that very few world leaders are trusted by both sides, both the East and the West, least of all trusted to play a mediatory role in the ongoing perilous conflict between Moscow and Kiev, which has consumed tens of thousands of lives already. Whether Prime Minister Modi can use the immense goodwill around him and his office to try and bring both warring parties to the dialogue table and find an all-elusive ceasefire, that is still a million-dollar question. One thing is very clear, the currency that India enjoys both as a global player and the remit that Prime Minister Modi enjoys as the leader of the world's largest democracy, which can bring warring factions together, has received a certain massive facelift, particularly in the last couple of months, first with his visit to Russia and then subsequently with his visit to Ukraine. Now, some people are calling this strategic balancing, but at the end of the day, if the international community needs to put its heads together and find a solution to this persistent Ukraine-Russia conflict, then it is very apparent that India and India's leader, Prime Minister Modi, will have a definitive role to undertake in that quest. We will keep an eye out on how Prime Minister's visit to America progresses.